can't lie, that intro was fire. I know it gave you the last Airbender vibe, you know, with the fire, water, but no. Today we're gonna be talking about the book Allegiant. It's from the Divergent series. Ha! So before we get into this book talk, I want to say that if you have not read this book or have read the first two before this, I advise you to not watch this video if you want to read this book, but if you have no problem with it, just keep on watching. First, we have Tris, and she is our protagonist of the story. She is our hero, our savior, and half of the story is actually told through her perspective. Next, we have Tobias. He is another main character of the story, and the other half of the story is told through his perspective, which is really, really cool. And he's also Tris's boyfriend, so... Next, we have Evelyn, which is Tobias's mom, and she's the ruler of the whole Chicago city. We have Caleb, and Caleb is Tris's brother. He actually betrayed her in previous books, so everybody hates Caleb because he's a traitor. Next, we have David, and he's also the antagonist, so we don't like him. Lastly, we have Nita. She is another antagonist of the story. She hits us by surprise, and we don't see her coming. You guys don't understand a word I just said. I'm gonna get to that right now because I'm gonna tell you guys what happens in the story. Let's go. This story starts off with Tris in jail. She lies her way out of jail, and then all of a sudden she's approached by this group called the Allegiant. Now, the Allegiant, conveniently, their goal is to get out of the city, and Tris is all in for it. But in contrast, Evelyn wants all the citizens to stay under her control and her ruling. So once the group leaves, the group meets Zoe and Amar. Those two take the whole group to the Genetic Welfare Bureau, where they all find David, and then David is the head of the bureau, so he's the one who was explaining to everybody else that Chicago is a social experiment for the genetically damaged. So the whole group gets tested, and they find out that Tobias is actually genetically damaged, and he gets thrown into a camp with all the genetically damaged people. And they realize that everybody else is divergent, but Tobias is not, so that's unfortunate. Tobias meets Nita, and she has a plan to reset all the citizens' memories. Now, Tobias tells Tris this plan, but she doesn't believe it, and she doesn't want any part of it. She's like, no, I don't believe that. And they disagree. But, get this, we later find out that Nita actually wants to kill everyone. Like, what? She and Tobias set off a bomb, and that causes them both to get arrested. Now, Tobias is released because he's genetically damaged, so you can see how that system works. Tobias volunteers to go back to the city and get all the friends and family he can find to tell them about the Allegiant and all that other stuff that no one ever knew about. And so Tobias manages to convince Evelyn to form an alliance with Allegiant and stop her ruling in power for good. At the borough, a whole emergency lockdown happens, and that forces Tris to start her plan earlier than she even expected. Her plan, which was to let out the memory serum to everyone. So this is when the crazy part happens. So Tris decides to sacrifice herself for her brother because Caleb would be doing it out of guilt, and Tris, she's a good girl. She goes in, and her plan actually works, and she survives the death serum. But unfortunately, Tris dies when David shoots her at the moment she releases the memory serum. So the memory serum is released to all the citizens of Chicago, and years later, Tobias, he's devastated, he's crying. But Tobias is actually afraid of heights, and he shows at the end of the story that fear is no longer a factor of him. I hope you guys understood that because that story was kind of crazy. So that you guys can have a better grasp of what's behind the story. The theme of the book that I got from it was life always gives you difficult decisions to make, especially if love is involved. Because the whole story was based upon relationships, and that it demonstrates people sacrificing themselves for others because their love is so powerful and so strong. And now we're moving on to symbols. Now, all you guys know that there are 5 factions, and those are the main symbols of the whole book. But aside from that, there's actually a symbol on the cover of the book. Here's what it looks like. Okay, no, you guys probably can't. I'm just gonna pop it up on the screen. So this is the symbol. And this symbol is actually not a faction symbol, but however, it did make an appearance in the book. I think of it as maybe as foreshadowing because the symbol of the water wave around it, which I grasp, means the situation symbolizes resolution of the final trilogy. Because water means nice, clear, you know what I mean? So the philosophy of this book would have to be the fact that Triss sacrifices herself for her brother and the sake of others by coming back to her roots of abnegation, which gives her the most selflessness out of everyone because abnegation is just pure selflessness. And I believe that could be a possibility. In this book, it has a little subtitle at the top which says, "One choice will define you." And this little subtitle is really powerful. I mean, Triss is doing her last decision, and that definitely defined her because of her selflessness. And she showed her heroism, and that defined her even more if she didn't even know the whole time. Because throughout the story, it doesn't really focus on that. But if you really think about it, it does. So this book is dystopian because the society defines citizens by strict conformity to their personality and social related affiliations with 5 factions. And those who fail their enrollment of their particular faction are pronounced factionless. They are also treated lesser than and are in lower class and make them feel as though they're a drain to society. What type of madness is this? But it is dystopian, I mean. What were you expecting? So I know what you're thinking. Why are you telling us all this information? Like, do you want us to read this book or what? Do you want to know why you should read this book? One, even though I gave you guys a ton of information about this book already, I really think you should read it because it resolves all the cliffhangers that book 1 and 2 has held the whole time, and it resolves all the questions that you had the whole entire time. And that just really helps the mind, you know? Secondly, the author Veronica Roth gives us wonderful new introductions to new characters. Number 3 is the development of the relationships of all these characters we would have never expected the whole time. And number 4, the ending is a true emotional roller coaster, and not even gonna lie, you're probably gonna find yourself crying, even if you thought you weren't, because it's pretty emotional. Just saying. And lastly, there are a lot of minor details that I really did not touch on or get to, and I feel like it would really help you understand the book even more and really grab you into the story, and it's gonna feel way better than how I explained it. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I really hope you consider at least reading this book or the first 2, or if you don't like reading, maybe watch the movies. And if you want, you can subscribe. But with that being said, see you guys in the next one. Blackout.